Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of The Brown Couch with Vanita. That's me. Today, we will have a guest host. Dana Davis, the business manager of Arch, will be sitting down with a young lady that both of us met while she was incarcerated, Vernita Williams. So sit back and enjoy a session with Dana and Vernita, and I will see you at the next session.
Vernita, it is so great to see you. I'm so excited. Why don't we start by stating how we met?
Absolutely. So Dana, it's great to see you too. It's been a while. And we actually met during the period of my incarceration, and you were leading the Girl Scout troop at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, and I became a participant, and my daughters participated, and ever since then we've just been connected.
We definitely have remained connected throughout the years of your incarceration. And how long were you incarcerated?
For 6 years.
6 years. Wow. So you've been home for how long?
Actually, July 3rd made officially 2 years that I've been home.
Wow. I want to kind of go back a little bit. Tell me kind of what it was like your first day walking through the gates of Ohio Reformatory for Women. Like, here you are, you've been sentenced to 6 years, get on this bus, and you enter what's going to be your new life for the next 6 years.
It was something that I will never forget. Definitely a life-changing experience. I don't have any prior criminal history, and so to realize when you're getting off of that bus and you're shackled that now you don't have your freedom anymore. You're not able to be around your children, you're not able to be around family and friends. It's definitely scary, and because I have no prior criminal history, I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
When I went through like the intake process, I just kept feeling dehumanized. I felt, things that you take for granted on the regular, getting dressed and getting, undressed, being able to get water, being able to get ice, being able to get food, being able to speak, like all of those liberties were taken away. And so to really understand the magnitude of confinement, it was something that was a concept I was struggling to grasp in that moment. I spent about 33 days during the admission process, which basically is a time frame where you're separated from the rest of the population and basically being watched to see what level they want to place you at. Are you going to be an individual who's going to be in trouble? Are you going to be an individual who needs to be isolated? And so you don't have an opportunity to really connect with others. There aren't groups. You're really literally separated. And so that was a challenge for me as well, because I'm used to being in society and some sense of normalcy, and there wasn't any. So it was life-changing.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, being away from your children. What was that experience like for them to, basically you had your children with you, you are involved mom, children lived with you, and then I know from being a part of Girl Scouts with the girls that they then transitioned to living with your mom and dad. Mm-hmm. So how did that take a toll on them?
It was a huge toll. Before I was sentenced, I actually spent a time of about 7 months where I was fighting my case and was in the county jail. during that period, my children were only 6 and 7. And so I felt that it was really important that they understood that mommy was not present, but they could not understand the concept of what was taking place. And so my goal had always been to provide age appropriate information to my children. And so during that 7 months, we talked on the phone, but I really didn't see them. And so that was hard on me. On them, they didn't understand.
Absolutely.
You know, they thought maybe I was in school, maybe I was working all the time. Once I was actually sentenced, I sat down on the phone, obviously. I called, and my parents were in the courtroom the day I was sentenced to 6 years. And my dad had my daughters, and he had them to sit down. And I had a conversation, and I said, you know, sometimes you can be involved with individuals, and sometimes things can happen. It doesn't make you a bad person, but you can make bad decisions. And because of that, I have to go to prison for 6 years. So again, 6 and 7, my 6-year-old said, so you're going to jail like SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, that's...
And so then my 7-year-old said, do you have to wear those black and white striped clothes?
From TV, they're used
From
to seeing.
TV, seeing cartoons where, you know, there was an episode where SpongeBob was like in a prison cell or was confined. And so in their mind, they were trying to put it together. Are you sleeping on a stone bed? You know, things like that. And so
they're trying to picture
exactly.
where is mommy at? What, you know, what environment is she in? You know, what does this mean? Jail.
Yeah.
Or prison.
So that was tough. I think it was harder on me at that moment. Once I arrived and was in prison, I think it took maybe 2 weeks before I was able to have an actual visit. And that was the first time I saw my children face to face in almost a year. And so sitting down, now they're looking and saying, this isn't what we're used to. And so a lot of questions started coming out. And so again, in my mind, I said, I have to give you age appropriate information.
Right.
Being gone for 6 years, obviously, I had to watch them grow from behind bars. And so through Girl Scouts, that helped me to be able to bond with them and also allowed them to be around other children, other girls
Absolutely.
who were same age group, going through same emotions, same thought process. And so that is when, for the first time, my daughters were able to express to me different hurts, express to me, well, my friend at school's mom and dad are coming to school and doing this and doing that. Why do we have to have our grandparents? Why can't you
anger
be here?
maybe set in with them?
So it was a roller coaster of emotions. There was anger, feelings of abandonment, a lot of issues with confidence. And so, you know, a lot of times when you're taken away, whether it is incarceration, addiction, just being
Illness,
separated,
anything,
and you're the primary parent or guardian of a child, a lot of times we focus on ourselves and we forget about what the children are going through. And so, this, again, a life-changing experience that I was able to see from both sides. And now that I'm home, I'm still experiencing it every day. I experience it with my daughters who are now 14 and 15. And so on top of being a parent of 2 teenage girls, I'm also dealing with 2 girls that I don't know and they don't know me. And so this journey has been very interesting, I'll say.
Absolutely. You know, there's no handbooks at parenting, right? Isn't that something that I used to always say? And in being a part of that program, one thing that I really strived in was to allow the women in the program to actually be mothers and be parents, because that's something that no one can change. You are their mother. No one can change that. And let's utilize this time to do so. And that isn't always pretty. There were times that when I came and said, you need to talk to them because they've been acting up on your mom, and you need to talk to them. And you take that time aside, and you were able to do, to do those things. But that doesn't allow you the opportunity to really watch them grow day to day and things like that. So let's talk about the transition. You've gotten yourself involved in positive things while you were at ORW, and now it's July 3rd and it's time to come home. I believe a month prior to that, I seen you at the Restored Citizen Summit, and I was so excited that you got to come to the summit from prison. But I remember seeing fear in your eyes without you even saying anything. So let's talk about how you overcame that fear, because that day was coming, right? There's one thing for sure, two things for certain. You did not have a life sentence, and you had an out date. So July 3rd comes. What was that day like?
Very stressful. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. So COVID came, and everyone out here was dealing with COVID, trying to figure out what was going on. But inside of these institutions, which to this day are still impacted by COVID.
Absolutely.
I was released in the beginning of COVID.
Right, so July 3rd, 2020.
2020. So
we didn't know what was going on.
I think it might have been maybe end of March, April, when things started happening. People were getting sick.
The world shut down for real.
Completely. So they completely shut down ORW, and we weren't allowed to have visits anymore. It was very difficult to even be able to get on the phones, because they had to start figuring out if people are using the phones, we have to go through and sanitize, we have to clean. So it was a lot of different practices that were put into place. In addition to that, we were no longer allowed to go to the gym, church.
Programming.
We weren't being able to do that. I was in school. I was taking college classes. That was completely shut down.
Wow.
In addition to that, being able to have that personal contact with people that you form bonds with,
absolutely,
over the years, if they didn't live in the same cottage as you never saw them.
Right.
So me knowing that I was involved in a lot of programs, a lot of groups, involved in church, taking college, I had basically built up relationships with a lot of the women, and knowing that I was getting ready to leave, it was almost like leaving your family again. And so that impacted me a lot. On top of, for the past 6 years, I've been completely away from the outside world, and now I'm being put back in there. And
kind of being isolated again from the outside world.
Absolutely. And so with that, I did have a lot of worry and fear. I spent 6 years planning and preparing for my release date, and knowing it was coming, I didn't know what to expect. 2 weeks, well, actually, it was about a week and a half before my release, they called the cottage, and I was removed from the cottage and put in isolation for quarantine.
Because you had to do that
because I had to do that prior to being released. And so in doing that, now once again, I'm around other women who were getting ready to go home, but I didn't know them.
Right.
Very limited. So we were only allowed to leave certain times, and we would have to walk together and go get food. So when you're on a routine, and that's something with being incarcerated, you end up being on a schedule, you're on a routine. So it's very difficult after you've been doing this for so long to switch your routine just overnight.
Absolutely.
So I'm used to eating at a certain time. I'm used to, when I want to take a shower, doing that. It totally changed when I was on quarantine. And so I really didn't eat at all. And then again, now I don't have my communication system like my JPay to send emails. I don't have the ability to just get on the phone and call my parents, to call my children, or anything like that.
You don't even really know what's going on with them, if
No.
they have COVID or if they didn't have COVID.
Don't. Another thing that is typical when you're preparing to leave is you have a case manager that you sit down with.
Absolutely.
And you talk about your exit strategy. That did not take place with me because of COVID. So I had no clue where I was going when I left. Literally the day before I left, it was not 100% approved where I was being released to. Because I completed my entire sentence, I should have been able to just leave prison and go home to my family or something of that nature. That did not happen. I ended up actually being sent to a transitional house and was told I had to be there for 90 days. So now coming home in the middle of the pandemic, coming home with no clothes, no shoes, nothing. I left prison with prison shoes on.
And not being able to contact family to have those things ready for you. Because they weren't allowed to bring things into the prison.
So not knowing sizing and things.
Right, all of that.
All of this is, you know, things that you may not think of, you know.
Right.
And I remember talking to someone and they said, but you're free. And I said, I am free, you know, but during my incarceration, I realized that my body was physically confined, but my mind didn't have to be. And so once my body was released from the institution, I had already in my mind had come to the realization that I was free.
So your mind had been free.
So my mind was free.
Right.
And now I am trying to understand what's going on now with being released. So July 3rd, I'm released. I end up connecting with my parents. There, I have a mentor, a big sister. She was outside of the gate. My brothers were outside, and then my daughters as well. And so because I was not able to go to their house, I was given a time where I had to leave ORW in Marysville and report to this transitional house. So they gave me 1 hour. Anyone who is familiar with travel, it's about a 40-minute drive to Marysville from Columbus.
If there's no traffic issues.
Yeah. So that's looking at, I'm leaving, you know, in state clothes. Everything that I owned, I gave to women that were there that didn't have anything because I said, there's no need in me taking this. So I remember I walked out and I had a young lady's state prison shoes on my feet that were 2 sizes too big. So they're flopping off my feet. But, you know, I didn't care. Like, you were able to get this and I'm leaving, you know, leaving my TV and things like that.
Absolutely.
So coming and saying, I have an hour to make it, I haven't eaten, I don't have undergarments, nothing, you know. So my parents on the way back to Columbus, we stopped at Target. I had a whole meltdown in Target. I had an anxiety attack. It was too many people for me, people moving around too quickly. We actually got to the self-checkout line and my mom had purchased like a little fashion book bag for me to put stuff in. And the lady looked and said, I need to open and check that bag before you put it in the shopping bag. And I looked around and there was a lady on the kiosk right next to us with suitcases and she didn't ask her. So now in my mind, I'm thinking, I just was released from prison. You don't know my story. You don't know me. You're asking to check this small little bag. This lady has a huge suitcase. Does she know I was in prison? Is it because of my skin color? Because that's another thing that was going on too, was you had the race riots that were going on in response to George Floyd. So you have George Floyd with the race riots, you have COVID going
Inside
on.
of W.O.W, all of this going on at one time.
Yes. And then being released from 6 years of incarceration.
And then being accused, basically, and labeled
yes, so,
upon your release.
Needless to say, I left there, I got in the car, and I told my parents, I said, I can't breathe. I'm not ready for this. This is not okay. And I actually cried the rest of the way to Columbus. And when we finally got to the transitional house, I had another meltdown because I did not want to go there. I didn't feel like I needed to be there. And the other thing that when you're incarcerated, they tell you is make sure when you come home, you change your people, places, and things. I went right back in the same neighborhood from where I had caught my case. And so for me, I spent so many years working on myself and working on why I allowed myself to entertain certain individuals, why I thought that being treated and talked to a certain way was okay, and really going through and just reevaluating myself to become a better woman and a better mother and a better person overall. And then I'm released and put right back in that same neighborhood. And so for me, it was not just a test because I felt I had the tools, but emotionally and psychologically, I felt that I was not ready. I was just thrown. There was no true preparation for my release date because of everything that was going on. It was very chaotic.
Right.
And so of course, July 3rd, you look at and you say the boom, which that didn't happen because of COVID. You look and you say families are together, people are grilling, everything's going on. I get there and I'm told, you are on complete lockdown for your first 72 hours. You are not allowed to leave. You cannot have people come visit you. So now I'm physically free. I'm back in a neighborhood that I was ripping and running in prior to my incarceration. And now I'm finally home and I have to stay in this house for 72 hours and can't leave. So, needless to say, when you're incarcerated and you're having dreams and you say, I can't wait for that day I'm coming home, you think like, you know, it's going to be a big parade and balloons.
But I told you it wasn't. I didn't know he was going to be shut down, but I was like.
And I'm like, this is it. Can we get a do-over?
Right. Like, this is not fair. This is not what I expected.
Yes.
Let's fast forward a little bit to present day. You've been home 2 years. You are living independently, correct?
Yes.
I know you were trying to attempt to buy a home. Did that ever happen, or are you still in that process?
So I'm still in that process. And one thing I do want to briefly highlight is housing for restored citizens. That is something that truly, truly needs to be tapped into. I was fortunate to, after my 90 days when I transitioned from the transitional housing, to be able to go into a home of my own with my children. And we've been there for the past 2 years. But trying to move and go into home buying or even looking at renting a home or, you know, an apartment, it has been a struggle for me. And I have several friends who are now home who are also going through the same thing where it is impossible. Having a record seems to keep being a negative mark when it comes to housing.
Housing is a huge challenge for everyone, let alone if you have a record. However, if you do have a record, it's a double whammy, it's a double barrier. Just so you know, we as advocates are diligently working to attempt to overcome those barriers. I'm grateful that you've had the opportunity to overcome that barrier. You are also full-time employment It's a wonderful career. And so you've overcame the barriers, you know, to being released, and especially being released into COVID. And so I'm really, really, really super proud of you for that, because as I've always told you, it is not going to be easy. Just because I don't have a background doesn't mean that I haven't faced challenges. So having a background, you're going to face those same challenges, but even more so in doing that. So I'm just grateful that we've had this opportunity today to catch up. I can obviously see that you've been utilizing your tools and resources. You did a lot of planning, which puts you in position for the unexpected that happens when you are released back into the community. It also puts you in position to overcome those challenges that we discussed. Not saying that those are going to happen, but hey, these are the challenges that are faced by people that have criminal backgrounds or that are formerly incarcerated. So all of your prior proper planning prevented poor performance in overcoming those things. So
Absolutely.
Super proud of you.
And also just the connections and
Absolutely.
having advocates like yourself that were willing to come in. I made sure to reach out to everyone when I was released.
Absolutely.
And just the continued support from you and from other individuals in the community has been amazing. With my employer, I am full-time employed and I work directly in the community. So I'm able to be very passionate about giving back and helping and assisting, having my daughters as a support, my family. And then in addition to that, I started 2 businesses as well since I came home.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I have a nonprofit that I started, and then I also have an LLC, a craft business. So being able to focus on those things, it kind of allows me to know that, you know what, you still can make it. You still can do it. It's going to be struggles. It's not going to be easy, but you've got a lot of people in your corner, and then I believe in myself, and so just continuing to push forward.
Any advice that you would like to give to someone that is being released from prison and coming back into the community?
Absolutely. Definitely reach out. You know, you have to ask questions. You have to go to these community agencies. There are a lot of community agencies that are willing to help, but if you don't make the effort, you know, you're not going to be able to know what's going on. And so I absolutely say reach out. And to the men and women coming home, if you are still in contact with individuals who have recently been released or who are already home, reach out to them too, you know?
Absolutely.
Because everyone that, you know, has come home recently has kind of prepared footsteps for those that are following. And so, you know, I say open your mouth and talk. Like, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid, just go for it.
Absolutely. And that builds relationships, so that is always good and helps in being successful upon returning home. Well, welcome home again, and so glad that you are still on the right track.
Yes.